You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
WGPR Detroit, HD2.
The views and opinions expressed on the following show are not necessarily the views and opinions of WHPS, its affiliates, management, or sponsors.
My name is Watson.
And my name is Mariah.
We're 12 years old.
And we're representing Old Redford Academy Middle School. And we're here to talk about drugs. Drugs are very dangerous and unhealthy.
And they can also ruin a relationship with your loved ones. Go talk to a family member, a friend, even a teacher, or you can go to a therapist, or if you need any extra help, you can go online and find all of those.
Hashtag not worth it.
Good day, good people. I am Heather Hedheru, your co-host on Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by Detroit Native Sun News. If you are looking for a way to advertise an event or a product or service, it's a great way to go. It's a local paper, and it's always available to you. If you're interested, please reach out to Valerie at 313-457-5944. Again, that's 313-457-5944. And as your co-host for Expose Under the Sun, I have been sharing with you to remember and to remind you that 2022 is a manifesting year. What that means is that be careful about what you say and what you ask for. If you keep the faith and you believe that it is yours, it will be. So make sure that you keep those positive words and affirmations in front of you in anything that you want to achieve or anything that you want to manifest. This is a great time to do that and to remember. The other thing that I've been sharing with you every episode is that we have to find ways to find our joy and relieve our stress. So I always start the show off with some new tools or some new ways to do that. So today, my 2 ways or my 3 ways to relieve stress and find my joy. One of the things that I decided to do since the beginning of this year was to create a joy jar. And basically, my joy jar has things that I like. If there are quotes that I hear or affirmations that I hear, I type them up, I cut them out, and I fold them up and I put them in my jar. Thoughts that I have, memories that I have, you can use it and make it a memory jar as well. But those things, fold them, type them up or write them down, fold them up and put them in your jar. And you shake up the jar. And when you're feeling your lowest or you're feeling lost or you're feeling not your best, always take one of those slips of paper out. And then you can actually make sure that you find your joy. So you'll find them some ways, and that's one of the ways I do it. A second way is that I know this is kind of weird, but I actually love bubbles. Either a bubble maker, or you can get them at the dollar store, the big bottles of bubble mix, and you can always get the different kind of bubble wands. So I will actually stand out in front of my house and I will swoosh my bubble wand around, making the biggest bubbles I could possibly make, and even some of the small ones. And believe it or not, so these are some of the health properties behind it, right? It's still exercise. It's a form of exercise. The other one is that when you're blowing the bubbles, you're taking deep breaths so that you can cleanse out your lungs. So you make it work for you 2 ways. So people may see you like, okay, this is a grown person blowing bubbles. But what they don't know is a grown person exercising in a new way and expanding my lungs and getting rid of all the toxins that may be weighing me down, which may be some of the reasons why I am feeling down or not my best. So a great tool to start. And then the last thing that I think is kind of a random act of kindness is I love to give people flowers. And if you are a Kroger shopper like I am, not trying to plug the store, but if there are local florists with you or near you or neighbors who wouldn't mind you having an opportunity to cut some flowers to give them away, flowers are a great way to lift up yourself because of the vibration of the flowers, but also to give them to someone else. So we're talking about giving as a tool, but we're also talking about the beauty and the vibrations that flowers offer is another way to be able to lift yourself and lift up others. So I want to talk to you a little bit more as we roll to our guest today, Dave Patterson, who is going to help us relate the stories of reshaping our manhood stories. So Dave is an amazing man, and I'm so glad that he's here today. He's an author, and his journey is just so amazing. Every time I meet him and I sit with him, I told him I always find something new to learn and exciting about him that is just always mind-blowing. I just found out today that he also sings. So welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So my first question for you today is, what are some of the ways that, one, you find your joy and relieve stress?
Well, one of the ways I find my joy is being able to celebrate God. I feel that since Afghanistan, which I was there in 2012, there was just an explosion of experience that I took back from that brought me closer to God.
Okay.
I believe I always was connected to him, but at the end of the day, I really, really got connected. Matter of fact, it was so funny because they made me the honorary chaplain assistant because I was just following everybody that was speaking about God.
Right.
So that's one thing, is I celebrate God. The second is that I spend a lot of quality time just meditating. I rise up, I'm still military in mind, so I rise up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and where I'm located, I get to walk by the rivers and the ponds and the lakes and
Nice.
just be in nature, and so that is my prayer closet. So that helps me to experience that joy. And then third, I guess, and I've started back. I used to ride horses when I was a child. I started when I was 9. And so I got back into doing that. So I'm back to breaking horses in. So those
Oh,
are my ways
nice.
of experiencing joy within myself. You know, these are my quality time moments.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just that little bit, you can only imagine the type of person that we're going to get to know today. So my first question is to tell me about yourself, a little bit about your education, where you grew up, and about your career pathway. How did you get to the military?
Well, initially, I graduated high school at 16 and a half, and I was, a partner of mine was on his way to Ohio to go to Ohio State, and I said, well, where are you on your way to? He says, well, I'm going to college. And I said, you know what, I'm following you. Now, I have to admit, when I went, I basically went in based on probation, because when I was in high school, I was just a party animal, you know what I mean? I really didn't even study, you know, school was easy, so I just had a good time. Well, anyway, we took off, and we went there, and what ended up with how I got in the military was my buddy next door where we lived at. He said he was going to the military because my parents couldn't keep me in college any longer. So he said, let's go on the buddy plan. I said, okay. So I went down, took the test. Well, we both did. He didn't pass the test. I passed. So he said, I'm going to take the test over. Well, he didn't do that. But when I came back to Detroit to tell my parents that basically I was joining the military, and I was the last of the Vietnam era. Oh, my mom cried like never before. So I went down to AV stations to, register and let them know I'm here. They had no record of me. So I didn't have to go, but I've been a person, anything I start, I take it to completion. So I did all the stuff, paperwork and everything, the test all over, and then I took off. And from there, I met a Marine who went Army and told me that don't never get out the military. So I vowed that I would never get out the military. Well, that career went from 1975 to 2014. So 37 years in total.
Wow.
So that's my military career and all the adventures, the travel. I always say, the military, the government take taxes, I take trips. So if you put me in one location, I'm going to go see 5 more.
All right.
Yes. So I've been pretty blessed to have lived and seen from one continent to another and a good portion of the United States. So it's gave me a very diverse kind of mindset of dealing with people, living life, and how you cope.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the mental, physical, and spiritual journey that you've taken.
Well, I've been on a lot of, how should I say, religious organizations because I was searching. I've always been searching. Even when I was a little boy, I was thinking about something the other day that I've always been a person searching for answers. And some things I got when I was a kid, but because I was a kid, I didn't understand the fullness of it. Growing up basically in Detroit, you kind of adapted to your environment. My environment was pretty much street oriented. Even almost got into some serious trouble because I grew up in the streets. But but I was always a little different. I was a little peculiar. And they even said that when it was part of a game, they said, well, I told my mother when I was in Iraq, said, Dave was always different from us. He'd be trying to reason with everybody and make everything okay. And we out here trying to commit a crime or do something us gangs would do. And he just didn't fit. And I knew I didn't fit. But me being a curious person all my life, I wanted to know what it was all about. I was never one to believe that an individual just read about it in a book or see it on TV. I have to do it myself. Right. Sometimes to my advantage and sometimes my disadvantage. So the whole process of evolving and growing caused me to recognize that as an individual, you have to find yourself. So I started on that path. And the military just opened up a bigger window, if you will, or a bigger door, if you will.
Okay. So I know that one of your current pathways, you're doing a dual degree, right? You're doing a master's and a doctorate degree.
Right. Well, they're two different locations. My doctor is out of Chicago. I got my master's in psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. So I just proceeded to go forward and get my PhD there. My master's, which is the second master's in marriage and family therapy. One of the reasons I took on that path was because of the fact that I saw so many marriages being basically broken in the military for a lot of reasons. Sometimes youth, sometimes environment, sometimes lack of knowledge, sometimes people weren't emotionally stable. Just a lot of decisions people made where the relationships just didn't last. They say the vows, but when worse show up, everybody like Houdini, they disappear.
Right.
And I knew that there needed to be something to help people to be more focused in their marriage. If you're gonna, even myself, I've been married twice. So even if you look up and you say, I'm committed to this relationship, but if you don't have the tools to work with the commitment, you just can't maintain that level of commitment in a relationship, if you will.
Absolutely.
So, so as you mentioned, I believe in check and balance. I believe that it's like a table. You have four legs. You have the emotion, you have the psychological aspect, you have the spiritual aspect, and the physical. And any one of those legs is off, you're out of balance. And so my emphasis is to push balance in everyone's life. My emphasis for my PhD is based on organizational leadership. That's what I did in the military, but as well as to understand the emphasis of how emotional intelligence help you to be able to emotionally regulate and stabilize and balance your life out. Because most of the things you see, like our crimes and things of this nature, is not driven by logic and reason. It's driven by emotion. And when they're sitting in jail, not logic and reason kicks in.
Right.
So if we can help people, especially men, I'm working with men specifically, if we can help them to find that balance, I think we can decrease the prison increase. I think we can decrease crime out here. I think we can decrease marriages breaking up. I think once people understand the importance of their emotions, see, we're mostly emotionally driven, and then we begin to reason. Now, very few people are going to be very linear. Most people are circular in their thinking.
So, and you mentioned your work with men. So tell us a little bit about For Men About Men.
FMAM. Yeah, I got to kind of connect it with the radio station. But FMAM, when I was growing up, that was a cool thing. If you get FM in there, you had AM, but if you had FM, you were cool.
Right. Right.
Well, For Men About Men, or FMAM, was formulated in the military because, again, I was running men groups. I actually, not only was I the person who was in charge of medical units, also was in charge of mental health units, what they call them combat stress units. So when soldiers would basically fall apart for whatever reason, then they would come see us. And when they would come see us, I noticed that a lot of men were struggling. They just didn't have a good identity. And because I think that one of the things that help you stabilize is know who you are. Yes. Well, the emphasis on emotional intelligence, the first point of that is self-awareness. Many people are not self-aware who they are. I call them surface riders. They ride on the surface, they go with the waves and go from there. To really know who you are, you need to be a deep-sea diver. You need to go down and get that wisdom, but you can't get that if you stay on the surface.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Wow. All right, so tell us about your journey into becoming an author.
Well, somebody told me, hey, there are three things you should do: have a baby, plant a tree, and write a book. Well, I had the babies, beautiful kids of mine, and then I haven't planted a tree, but I figure I'll write a book. I've been writing books in my head for years. It wasn't until actually when I was on the show, Emmy, that I met a young lady named Laquita Parks, and I just loved the way she was invested in her authors, not because she was trying to make a buck, but she really cared, and that moved me to say, let me get activated and do something about becoming an author.
Okay.
As she say, take your vision and bring it to reality. I love that. Take your story, as you will.
So we have your book here on the table. Tell us a little bit about the content.
Well, the content of the book is basically it's a multitude of different authors, and it's suit for service, it's the unsung heroes, and they're telling their story. Even though it talks about men, there are women in this too, and they talk about those who had been in the military, had their experiences and the challenges they faced, and how they overcame their challenges, and what they learned from that experience. So one of the things that I push a lot again about books is that you're reading somebody's experience and it comes to life. Hopefully you'll be able to pull from that information that helps you to really work on your own experience again to find that check and balance.
Awesome. So if you, whether you're military or not, you'll have value from this book. So make sure that you get your copy. So where can people get their copy?
They can get it basically on Amazon. They can get it on personally from me, and then from Laquita Parks. I'm blocking her actual website right now. Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
We know how to find Amazon, and how do we find you?
Well, you can find me at FMAM Facebook.com, or you can find me at DRome7 at Yahoo.com, or my phone number is 608-343-0875.
All right, and so we'll repeat that again for our viewers to make sure that you can get your copy of his amazing book, more about his story and life lessons that we can apply every day. It's so much encouragement in hearing someone else's story and being able to pull from it and draw strength from it. So I thank you for putting that together.
Yes.
So a couple more questions. So this particular question, I would like for you to share some insight about why people, especially men, should seek mental and spiritual wellness.
I think, like as I said, it's all kind of a conglomerate. You have to put these pieces together. Mentally, God said he did not give us a spirit, but a power, love, and a sound mind. You need to be able to develop that sound mind. My emphasis, as God said, was let it be founded on love. We are bombarded with a lot of information, and this information needs to be deciphered. You need to find that check and balance. But if you don't have the resources or the tools to do that, then we can see where people get the lines blurred. When we see people who are compromised from a mental health standpoint, use this because there are a lot of factors that come into play: environment, rearing, education, the support system that they have, and then as well genetics. And if all those things are not basically checked and balanced in the long run, they end up being compromised. And so we see this. So finding a way to find good mental health so you can be stable is important. The other part about spirituality, I believe we're a spirit house in a body. And so because we're a spirit, it's important to develop that spirit. Just like you develop your body, you need to be able to feed it so it be nourished. Too many people are spiritually emaciated. So I think it's so important to be able to understand God's word. That's what I believe. Now, mind you, I've studied under a lot of beliefs. One of them that was my biggest push was the Buddhist belief. And I realized that they really pushed the emphasis on understanding self from the inside out. And this helped me to begin to put the pieces together. When I came back to become a Christian and take on that knowledge, it made me even look at the Bible from a different perspective, from cover to cover, to pull out the principles that will allow me to spiritually mature. Right. If you lack spiritual maturity, you lack balance. And people don't put a lot of emphasis on it. They look at the spiritual piece from, and not all folks, but many of them look at the spiritual piece as just say kind of pie in the sky. But it's what drives you every day. You don't wake you up. God wakes you up. It's him that gives you your breath and strength. So once you understand the importance of your spiritual development, then all those other things start to balance out. Because in God's word, We're righteous based on him. So there's an emotional piece that's connected to us because of God, because of God's word. As I mentioned earlier, he gave us a spirit of power. That power is what helps us to move forward. He gave us a spirit of hope. That hope doesn't disappoint. It allows us to grow and keep moving forward. He gave us a spirit of faith, faith that we can move mountains when challenges come, because they are coming.
Right.
There's no way you can live in this life and not be challenged. And that's what I call them. I don't like the word weakness. I just call them, okay, I'm faced with challenges. I may be a little compromised in the area, but because he gave me a sound mind, a good solid basis to have strong mental health, I can use that to be able to move forward and accomplish anything I set my mind to do. But I got to feed my mind that which is positive, that's which is faith-filled, because if I feed the negative, negative's going to come out. So
Right.
it's so important to find a check and balance. I believe in anybody. I always tell people, you don't have to believe the Bible, but if you just read the basic principles from it, you're going to be able to be successful, because the principles are positive. If you
Right.
like that positive psychology,
Right.
this is why I study many genres, if you will, and educational disciplines, because they allow me to do the balance. We're not born in a vacuum. There's so much that has to be applied to our lives, and you need to be educating yourself, formal, experiential, spiritual, emotional, to be able to do the balance. And that requires being patient with yourself and investing the time. One doesn't invest in themselves, does not receive a harvest from themselves.
That's amazing. So, because this topic is about shaping men's stories, manhood stories, how would you? So, say for the young men coming up behind you, how would you? What advice would you give them for shaping?
Well, the first thing I
Their
always like to
story.
say that your manhood is not defined by man, it's defined by God. Because man is inconsistent. The one thing that we are definitely can always do, we always can be inconsistent. But what does that mean? Does that mean that's a negative? No. It's just we only going to be able to do so much because we're human beings. However, you strive to develop a consistency in your life. And the first thing you have to understand, other people can't define you. I remember very briefly a woman defined me as a person to be would have 5 kids, work in a factory, and this would be my life. Well, I went on to educate myself, do what I had to do, came back and told her, and the particular students that I was speaking in front of, you cannot allow other people to define your destiny. You cannot allow external factors to control your internal stability. You have to define yourself. This is how you begin to define your manhood. Many of the reasons we see a lot of men in prison when they do domestic violence, because they have a blurred understanding of what being a man is all about. Manhood is developmental. It's over the course of a lifetime. It's not, okay, I'm a man because I'm 18. I'm a man because I have a job. That's just what you do. That's not who you are. Manhood
Say that
is
again.
about,
Say that
it's
again.
just what you do. It's not who you are. Those external things that you're doing, they just help kind of give an outward manifestation of who you are. Well, if it hasn't been developed, and again, this is ongoing, you have to continue to develop yourself. Again, I'm an advocate reader. We talk about that all the time.
Yes.
I got books in storages. I got books everywhere. I got books in my car. And it's not because I just have to have this lettering on a white piece of paper. There's experiences that are there, and those experiences help to shape and redefine my man, because you're always redefining. You are go through a developmental cycle from a child, from adolescent to right on into senior citizen, right, or elderly. Well, in that each time you will change, you will evolve. One of the things the Bible tells us, let a man examine himself. As you move through your manhood, you should be re-examining yourself so you can continue to develop yourself. One of the other things I do for relaxation is bodybuilding. Well, you may not have came genetically looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Ronnie Coleman, right? But you have to develop. But when you talk to them, they had to develop. They came with some form. Maybe their legs wasn't in symmetry with their arms. So they had to develop that, and they had to keep going back to it. Well, those same principles apply to you from a spiritual standpoint, emotional standpoint, and a psychological standpoint. Even they talk about in the Bible, we talk about the athlete. Yes, it's nice to train, but you got to train the spirit as well. So it's always, your manhood is always about defining. So how would I get point? You always seek to develop yourself from the inside out first, not the outside in. Those are just the outward factors. You always maintain that stability inside out. And you can't do that unless you continue to examine yourself. You cannot ever get complacent and go status quo on who you are as a man.
Awesome. So, Dave, before we wrap up, please again tell us how to find you.
Okay, you can find me at Facebook at fmam.com. You can find me at drome7 at yahoo.com. And you can contact me directly at 608-343-0875.
Dave, I cannot explain to you how important this conversation is, and the fact that you keep having it, and that this is part of your journey. Your destiny is to help reshape manhood stories. You know, and being the example and being open enough to share and guide people along this journey is, I'm so grateful that you are the one that's leading.
Thank you.
So as we are closing up today, you gave some really good points about for what men can take with them. Can you give us like 3 points to remember for women to help encourage their men?
So let me understand the question. You're saying what women can do to encourage their men?
What can women do to help encourage our men and our sons, our boys? Just three quick
One,
things.
show them value, listen, and support.
Wow. Well, you heard it here. I wanted to just thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank you for your continued support. And I want to share with you that my new co-host is going to be Suzanne Jarrett, who's going to be the new co-host of Expose Under the Sun. You will see her in the next 2 episodes, and embrace her. She's an amazing woman. I thank my producer, Sharon Dumas. I thank Valerie Lockhart and this station for entrusting me to share this journey with you. And for those of you who are listening and watching, you can find me at yourinspiredjourney.com. You can find me on Facebook under yourinspiredjourney.com. You can find me, Google me at Heather Heteru Miller. And you can also reach out to me on my business line, which is 313-759-7855. This has been an amazing season in my journey, and I'm so grateful to have been here and shared this time with you. I am looking forward to our next exciting adventures together. And remember, 2022 is your manifesting year. What are you going to say to make sure that it happens for you? So I thank you. Remember to continue this journey of community wellness, because if you're well, you help make our community better. Thank you.